Hello, Micah here. Welcome back to The Echo. Today we're locked in on Obsession. Where do I even start, man? Truly one of the best movies I've seen in years. It's an instant classic and not only one of the best horror movies I've ever seen, but just one of the best films, period. Written and directed by Curry Barker of social media fame, starring his homie Cooper Tomlinson, who's frequently featured in the online skits that he and Curry create, Michael Johnston, Megan Lawless, Andy Richter for some reason, and last but certainly not least, and one of the greatest rookie performances I have ever seen, I'm talking about a Luka 30-point triple-double here. If I had to put her performance in basketball terms, I'm saying she put up 42, 13, and 10. And that's with only 3 trips to the foul line. Yeah, nigga, she was hooping her fucking ass off. We'll get back to her performance though, because I want to give anybody who hasn't seen it a chance to hear about it without spoilers, even though I know it's been like a month now. So here's our little non-spoiler section. This is one of the greatest directorial debuts of all time. Obsession was shot on Arri Alexa 35 and Panavision Ultra Speed Mark IIs. The Ultra Speeds were so useful for shooting in low light environments and maintaining the darkness and tension in every scene. There was an entire bidding war for the film, and I understand why. To shoot something like this for under $1 million was crazy. Curry Barker as a first-time director and writer definitely did his thing, but first let's talk about some other people who made this film possible. Starting with the cinematographer Taylor Clemens. 20.6 rebounds and 20 assists, what a double-double, brother. He made such good use of the 150-to-1 aspect ratio. It made us feel like we were boxed in with the characters in these crazy uncomfortable situations. They shot the scenes where everything is shrouded in darkness at around 260 EI, which is way under the native exposure for the Alexa 35. Shout out to Gaffer Christopher O and the entire lighting team who did a great job at putting light in key places to make sure those scenes are just visible enough to maintain the detail in the shadows and haunt us even in the next scene. Production designer Vivian Gray, art director Sally Choi, and costume designer Blair James, y'all are moving like Prime Teen 7 when it came to the mise-en-scene. I think the reason that people are watching this film so much is because it really captures the spirit of our generation. The sets and costumes felt so real and made the characters feel like people we knew so early on. The makeup department, Maxence Florid, Alyssa Holbrook, Caitlin Lyerly, Kate Oja, Ali Shehorn, and Ingrid Weeks. Y'all went absolutely crazy, man. Once we get to the spoiler section, I'll explain more, but I had to shout out the artists behind the film. The entire crew did their thing. The film's IMDb is linked in the description, so go follow and support these artists however you can. There's been some controversy around the cast and crew not seeing anything from the residuals, especially when the film just passed like 125 mil. But the only way we can try and change that is by recognizing the people who make these films possible and be more vocal about changing the industry. Alright, so spoilers. Obsession follows the story of Bear. He's a sappy white dude who lives alone with his cat. He's finally decided to work up the courage to tell his work crush Nikki about his feelings for her. At first we're kinda rooting for Bear, because he pours his heart out in practice to a waitress and his friend Ian. He seems earnest, and if this were any other genre of film, we'd expect Bear to tell his crush how he really feels and it'd all work out. His buddy Ian advises against that, saying that Nikki would hate the sappy shit and it would ruin the dynamic of the friend group of coworkers they built. From the start, the tension is so expertly directed. We push in on Bear, and while his crush seems earnest, you can tell that it's something that's been on Bear's mind, maybe a little too much. So Bear decides to get Nikki a gift, passing up on a crystal necklace that would bring happiness, saying Nikki would hate that, and instead choosing to buy a one-wish willow, which brings anything you wish if you break it. The cashier immediately tells him, "Don't come back and complain about your wish." And you would think that he would take that as a warning, but yeah, he definitely doesn't. Bear goes home to find that his cat dies, getting into a bunch of pills that were just out and about for some reason, showing that he's careless, cause cats can't just open medicine cabinets, man. I know I got one. Nikki calls Bear asking him to hang out with the group because unfortunately she's put in her 2 weeks to pursue her dream of becoming a writer. Bear totally could have been like, "Nah, my cat died, man. We still got 2 weeks. I'll talk to you every day. It's all good." But instead, he chooses to go out and give Nikki the wish and tell her how he feels. Which isn't the worst decision that Bear makes, but I don't know, he definitely could have stayed home. After a night out with Ian and Sarah, Bear's other coworker, who clearly has a bit of a crush on him, Bear drives Nikki home. Sadly, this night is the only characterization we get of Nikki. Her humor, kindness, intuition, and goals in life. She talks about wanting to be a writer, and the work that she's currently writing being a love story, not a romance, which is such a doomed and key line to the entire film. When Bear drops her off, he almost tells her how he feels. Instead, he insults her with the nickname Freaky Nikki that he knows she hates. And when she confronts him and asks about his feelings, he doesn't say shit. It's not until she leaves that he grabs the one wish Willow and breaks it, wishing that Nikki Freeman will love him more than anything else in the fucking world. The wish takes effect immediately, and Nikki walks back to the car acting erratic and strangely, sometimes seeming to snap, confused on where she is and what she's doing. But she comes back to being totally infatuated with Bear. She lies to get back to Bear's house and they end up hooking up. A relationship starts between them, and Bear refuses to blame the sudden change in Nikki on the wish he made. Instead, he goes with the lie of her estranged father being sick. The rest of the group knows that Nikki isn't close with her dad and that she never had such strong feelings for Bear on the outside, so the change is sudden and weird. Bear takes full advantage of Nikki's attention. Even when she begins to act beyond strange and her behavior moves into the terrifying, he still keeps her around like a pet, trying to control her behavior and make her into the perfect girlfriend. Her behavior is scary, yeah, but also sad. We see her talk about having bad dreams, and we as the audience know that she has no control over behavior, that she's subject to Bear's wish. But Bear keeps pretending that everything's fine. Even when she cooks the cat, this nigga still acts like everything's cool. Bear calls the hotline on the one wish Willow box, but he doesn't try to take back his wish. He just tries to alter it at first. He complains to the attendant on the line about Nikki's behavior and still tries to express some need to control the way she feels about him. In one of the most chilling lines of the film, the attendant asks, "Well, do you want to talk to her?" And we hear Nikki start screaming over the phone. This is the first indication to us and Bear that the Nikki who suddenly falls in love with him is not herself, and the real Nikki is trapped somewhere. The attendant tells Bear that if he died, then the wish would be void, and he kinda has a responsibility to stay with Nikki now, because he wished for her undying love, and now he has it. But it's not what Bear wanted. So Bear gets invited to a kickback hosted by Ian, who tells him not to bring Nikki, but he does anyway. Nikki causes a scene, reads eerie excerpts from a work that's likely her consciousness trying to break free. She physically moves Sarah from Bear's left when he gets a drinker dare saying kiss the person on your left. The night ends with Nikki snapping, screaming, and self-harming, while Bear avoids and just sits watching in a chair while everybody's like, "Bro, what are you doing? That's your girlfriend." Even worse, later that same night, Sarah invites Bear out for a late night talk. While Nikki sleeps, the real Nikki speaks to her in her frightening voice, pleading with Bear to kill her and end her misery. Bear asks, "What's so wrong about being with me?" Nikki replies, "I've never been with you, Bear." Another couple of the most haunting lines in the film. Despite Nikki's begging and the fact that this is all his fault in the first place, and he has the girl he's always wanted, he still goes to see Sarah late at night. Sarah wants to tell him that Ian and Nikki have been hooking up on and off for 2 years, which is why it's really been so strange to see them as a couple. Sarah's worried about him and sees him as the victim in the situation, and they're on the verge of, something probably happening. Then bam, Nikki breaks the window and slams Sarah's head on a brick until she's unrecognizable. Bear has had enough. He goes back to the shop to complain about his wish, but they tell him that he can't make another wish. Well, it's only if that someone else's wish were to counter his that maybe things will go back to normal. So he goes to Ian and explains everything, but Ian thinks that Bear's been taking advantage of Nikki and believes that the wishes aren't real. So he wishes for $1 billion and then immediately just falls from the sky in the funniest scene in the film. Bear has no other choice but to ask Nikki to counteract the wish. But she's fully consumed by the obsession entity, and she skinned Sarah's corpse and tried to make herself look like her. She's got a gun and pleading with Bear to love her. Ian shows up and she kills him immediately. Boom, headshot! Bear decides he has to kill himself, as well as the rest of the pills that killed his cat. In his final moments, he seems to find a strange love for Nikki, smiling as he rejoins her. We see that she did make a wish, but we'll never know what it is, and Bear dies in her arms. The possessed Nikki is about to kill herself out of her love for Bear, when instead she suddenly wakes up, and the film ends with her screams from the horror of the scene around her. Absolutely crazy story, man. It's just one of those that sticks with you for a long time. Curry Barker and Inda Navarrete really did a great job at creating a terrifying character with Nikki. There are so many moments where the tension is carried by her performance and facial expressions alone. The makeup team also did uncanny valley makeup on her in some moments, adding to the terror. The entire team on this film really came together and did their thing, and made one of the best films of all time. So what's Obsession's echo? I think it's that we should always be honest with how we feel, because people are more than the ideas that we create of them. It can be easy to get stuck in your head with the way you feel about someone, whether it's positive or negative, but until you tell them, you're just hyper-focusing on the idea of them that doesn't exist. Bear never really wanted Nikki. He wanted this idea of Nikki as his quirky, kind, funny, trophy girlfriend. They'd been friends for years. He probably had feelings for her for years, and he never said anything. Not just Bear, but Sarah too. If she would have told him how she felt despite how he felt about Nikki, or told him about Nikki and Ian and Nikki's brotherly feelings toward Bear before they got together, then suddenly her chance to be with Bear was gone. I think the film is so haunting because we all know or have been a Nikki or an Ian or a Bear or a Sarah. These characters are true to the reality of our generation, especially guys in the myth of love that we create that protects our egos, instead of the hard work that it can take to actually love somebody. Bear didn't know that Nikki and her dad didn't talk, which is likely a formative experience for her and the person that she became, but it wasn't important to him. The difference between love and obsession is accountability and empathy. Being able to check in with yourself and the person you have feelings for and really look at who you both are in order to see if those feelings are real. It's hard, and it takes real honesty, and it's something that Bear wasn't able to do. I've seen a lot of discourse on the film talk about bipolar disorder and relating it to Nikki's character, and I think that's harmful. Nikki was literally possessed and fighting for control of her body. And while her behavior might have similarities to extreme cases of BPD, I think it's unfair to compare the two. It would be different if the story was built around Nikki already having those feelings for Bear, but it's clear that she never did, or at least not to that degree. Especially when women already get unfairly attached with mental health disorders that just don't apply them because sometimes men just don't want to deal with our behavior. The real villain of this film was always Bear. Sure, he couldn't have known when he made that wish that magic was real, but even then, it was supposed to be a gift for someone he really cared about. Not something for himself to use just even as a joke or a toy. He became the villain when he knew that Nikki wasn't herself and still proceeded to use her like an accessory to his ego, like a pet. Which is why I think the entity took on the characteristics of Bear's dead cat and became obsessed with it, creating a memorial for it, watching Bear sleep and zooming around the house, and sitting in her own filth and vomit waiting for Bear to return. I want to talk about the ending a little more, because I think that the last wish is so important even though we don't know what it was. The final sequence really showed how much of a coward Bear is. He didn't want to sacrifice himself for Nikki even after his wish was causing her so much pain and resulted in Ian and Sarah's deaths. He couldn't shoot himself, and even when he takes the pills, he immediately tries to throw them up, until he snaps and walks out, seemingly infatuated with Nikki like nothing happened and they're the perfect couple. I have two theories here. One is that the entity, who was so consumed by love, wished that Bear would love Nikki as much as she loved him, which made Bear realize that he needed to die if he really cared about her, because anybody who truly loves you in that situation will make that sacrifice. Or, the real Nikki had a momentary snap and took control while the One-Wish Willow was in her hand, and then she wished that Bear would die so she could break free. Either way, it's such a tragic ending. So please avoid the easy way out, man. Don't make a wish or wait for some magical moment. Those don't exist. Love only exists in reality. The little moments and the constant effort to show up for someone who wants that from you and wants to return it. If you let your feelings fester, the chance that love can become an obsession. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe and comment. We're trying to hit 100 subscribers by the end of June. Next up, we're talking about Backrooms and Disclosure Day. Peace.